That's a bad word, but you're only as strong as your weakest link.
And if you start with that in mind, it's again with the end in mind.
Jim, I'm not letting you get much time here.
No, you're good, man. Keep going.
Well, but in home service, we say do a ride along for 2 weeks and you're on your own forever. Why is that?
You're listening to the Roofing Success Podcast, a show created to inspire roofing contractors to achieve optimal success in their roofing businesses. I'm the host, Jim Aline, the co-author of the books Internet Marketing for Roofing Contractors and The Best Known Roofer. I'm also the co-founder of Roofer Marketers, the leading digital marketing agency for the roofing industry. On each episode, I sit down with industry leaders to talk about their processes, the lessons they've learned, and how to find success in roofing. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Roofing Success Podcast. If you see those buttons in front of you, might say subscribe, might say comment, might say leave a review. Click on it for me. Click on it. We have the great Tommy Mello in the house today. Someone not from the roofing industry. Isn't this crazy? How are you today, man?
Today's a great day. Today is a fantastic day. I got my fingers, my legs. The business is doing well. My personal life's doing well. So I couldn't be happier. I thank God every day. I'm very fortunate. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, Jim.
Yeah, man, real excited. I mean, we have a lot of mutual friends, through the years, and you've just done. I mean, you've done things that, on a business level that people almost don't even dream about, right? Like it's like high level dreams is where you've ended up right now, and I know, this is the Roofing Success Podcast, but the home services industry, contracting, the growth of a business in this type of industry, the hiring of people in this industry, we're hiring a lot of the same type of people. We're marketing in a lot of the same ways, marketing to homeowners. I thought it would be an amazing time to have you on here. So let's talk about your story, man. Let's talk about how you got started and built A1 Garage and the journey from there.
Yeah, so I'm just, I'm not very different than any business owner. I'm from Detroit. Had a pretty good youth, but my parents got a divorce when I was 7. And my mom worked 3 jobs. When I was 12, I got a job washing dishes. A year before you were legally able to work, I was making $4.05 per hour under the table. I was mowing lawns, shoveling snow, just trying to help out mom. And my dad had a transmission shop, didn't like paying the IRS, so that kind of ended his career. And he went to work for Amco years later. But he was a hustler, man. Taught me a lot when I was a kid. And my mom just was there to give me the love and support. And it wasn't very shocking that a lot of the Christmases and Thanksgivings were provided by our church. I got a lot of Bibles, lots of student Bibles. And over the years, I just knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't really know what I was signing up for. I moved to Arizona when I was 16, wanted to be near dad, puberty, all that good stuff. And made a lot of mistakes in business. I always say if you could make a mistake, I made it. So I started painting garage doors and ended up getting a job. I ended up starting a business with another garage door tech who happened to be my best friend. And I was still painting doors, bartending. I was flipping Bowflexes, buying and selling cars. I was working 7 days a week. I was making a lot of money. In my early 20s, I could make $1,000 a day pretty easily. But when I didn't go to work, when I was out of town, shit would fall apart, like in a horrible way. And in 2010, because my partner, an amazing guy, still one of my best friends, he didn't work as hard as me. And I never liked that. And so I told him, I'm going to take over the business or you could have the debt. And that's where I wrote the book, Home Service Millionaire, from $50,000 in debt to $30 million. I got my mom and stepdad to move out here in 2010 just because I trusted them. And trust was a commodity. It was very hard to find at that time, somebody that I could trust. People were stealing from me. I was the hardest worker. I was still in a truck. Started in 2007, took over the business and became the sole owner in 2010. And in 2014, I found an awesome integrator. I went through my master's degree Didn't learn a lot about home service, but what I did learn is how to network, and I learned a lot about marketing, and I learned a lot about public speaking. And then 2017 comes around. We got onto ServiceTitan, and I met a guy named Al Levy. And Al Levy wrote the book, The 7-Power Contractor. And Al taught me about manuals, standard operating procedures, checklists. So I invested 300 grand into Al. And I finally started making money. I learned about the 7 powers. And without meeting Al Levy, I don't think I'd be here today, because I learned org charts, manuals, standard operating procedures, steps to delegation, how to set up a training center. And he charges, what I paid 300 for, he charges 10 grand, but it's more of a program you go through. But just, if anybody has not built the standard operating procedures and a price book, and just, you need to meet Al Levy. And then at that time, a year or two went by, and Al was in my office, and he said, "Hey man, I don't really like your wraps. You know, you got your picture on the side of there. It's cool, but it doesn't really scream out what you do." And I said, "So what do you recommend?" He goes, "Let's take a picture of your vehicle wrap black and white. And let's see if you could even tell what you do by that, just by a glimpse of it. Let's go around and ask other people." So we did, and he was right. And so we went to a guy named Dan Antonelli with Kick Charge. And Dan wanted me to change the name, but I was not going to do that, because we were already in 10 states at the time. Now we're in 20. We're in 40 markets. We're going to break through 200 million. But the big thing is we're at 23% bottom line. We're on our way to 30%. And I don't talk as much about revenue as I do about profitability now. And Dan said, "Listen, I want to know what your core values are. I want to do a competitive analysis. I want to do a federal trademark. I want to do all these things." And so I invested, I don't know, 30 or 40 grand with Dan, which was a lot of money then. And I didn't realize how important the brand was. And to have a business that's, the billboards look like the yard signs, look like the stickers, look like the website, look like the vehicles. And a lot of people said I would never pay 30 grand. I'm already doing okay. Well, I was already doing, 60 million at the time. And I had no idea that the average ticket would go up, the conversion rate would go up, the search and click-through rate, the marketing dollars became cheaper. I had no idea that people would show up to my door to come work for me by creating a really great brand and having a jingle, and what Dan did for me. So between Al and Dan, things really moved into a profitable business. Before I was making a lot of revenue, I wasn't keeping a lot of it. So those two guys I owe a lot to. And then, I started my own podcast called The Home Service Expert. And unlike any other podcast you may have heard, I used that for my own self. So one of my buddies listened to the podcast. He says 1 through 50 got me to 10 million. 50 through 100 got me to 15 million. And now he's going to do 25 million. He's like, it's kind of like in the chronological order of what you did in your business. And we've got the Facebook group that people ask a lot of questions. There's like 8,000 people in there. And we're sharing in there.
Yeah.
We talk about hiring. We talk about marketing. We talk about pay-per-click and organic and LSA, PPC, and GMB. And we go through all these things on what's working. And if somebody needs help hiring a CFO, we talk about it in that group. So it's been a great thing for us. And I use the podcast. There's no way in my life I would ever go without doing a podcast, because I could get the number one person in the country at negotiations, Chris Voss on the podcast. I mean, I got him coming on next year. Like, never split the difference. Like, anything I need in my business, I go get the help and I talk about it on the podcast. It's literally for me. And people really get charged by that. So the podcast was very important. I guess that probably why you're doing it is because it answers a lot of questions and we give a lot.
That's right.
And that was the foundation of the business. And then we did an exit. So I built a board and I did what's called an equity incentive program, where I had 25 people that had ownership of the business in equity units, but that wasn't worth any money until I exited more than 50%. So Tom Howard was on my board, and he flew out and said, "Hey, you might want to think about," he goes, "How many deals do you have lined up?" And I said, "I have 40 NDAs and a lot of letter of intent signed." And I said, "The bank, I got a delayed draw term loan for 30 million, but they're making me buy a deal only every 90 days. And they want to see how the financials perform." And he said, we did this whole thing. We went back to my house. We watched The Big Short. And he said, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. He said, this is the middle of COVID. You've got more demand than you could handle. So we built this hiring machine, this training center where we were able to take a busboy and turn him into $1 million tech in literally 2 months with L's help. And so we did all this analysis, and I said, okay, I'm going to do a deal. So we got in the process last summer. We finished out our deal. We ended up we were at 27 million of EBITDA at the time. We're closer to 50 now, 1 year into it. And, we made 25 millionaires in the process. Some people 1 million, some people 10 million. So it was really cool to celebrate, but I rolled. What rolling means is I put half of it back into the new deal. So I own half the company. And, now we're racing. I'm trying in 2025 to hit 110 million of EBITDA and trying to set a record in the multiple. Then I'm going to roll again, continue to be the CEO. Then we're going to go public. And I know these things might sound foreign, or they might sound French to a lot of people, but educating yourself on building a business that's worth a lot of money, that help out a lot of people, where the employees win, the technicians, the installers, the CSRs, the dispatchers, where my customers win, where my vendors win, and my partnerships win. And that's why I wrote the book, Elevate, Build a Business Where Everybody Wins. And it's a whole different philosophy on things, is sitting down with an employee. Jim, I'm not letting you get much time in here.
No, you're good, man. Keep going. I'll jump in wherever. It's amazing, man. Like, it really is amazing. Let's start with let's stop for a second and go back on a couple of things that I think are really important. It was you were the contractor, the entrepreneur out there running all your time in the business, right? Everything is. And then you learned SOPs and hiring and understanding that building of the team. Is that kind of what I'm hearing? It was like that was the first layer of what led you to the into the 8 figures, right? And multiple 8 figures as the business.
I'd say the real catalyst was in 2014 when I met the right-hand integrator that did everything that I hate doing. I think being well-balanced is bullshit. Yeah. And I think it's garbage. I think you should hire for your weaknesses. Don't hire more people like you. And I think you should be the best at what you do the best. There's a good book called 10X is Better Than 2X, and understanding your superpower and compounding on that. And another quick thing I'll tell you is that control your schedule. I hired an executive assistant 5 years ago. And I learned that checking email, opening Amazon packages, and anything – I'll tell you this. You should figure out what you make per hour. If you knew the number that I make per day, if I do this next deal, or what I've already made, and I'm not being cocky.
No.
I shouldn't be really doing anything unless it has to be me. I shouldn't take the top paid lawyers in the world and the top CFOs in the world and the top, you name it, digital agencies. I probably make 100 times more than them per hour. The best of the best. And I'm not bragging about that. What I'm saying is it really puts a perspective on where you're spending your time and what to say no to. And I read this book by Gary Keller called The One Thing, and focusing on the one big thing and getting rid of all the distractions. And so many entrepreneurs out there, they say yes all the time. They're always got a new idea. They don't have a great system in place. There's either no system, the wrong system, or the system's not being followed. And they don't have a good org chart, and they want to be the smartest guy in the room. And I'm the dumbest guy in the room. I hire people way, way, way smarter than me. And I don't mind being that. And the caliber of people I'm getting, an A player overruns circles around 10 B players. So the integrator, controlling your schedule, understanding how much you make, and understanding what Al taught me was the steps of delegation. And I'll share this. It's a simple notepad, and I could give a copy to the employee because there's a yellow copy. And here's what needs to get done. Here's why it needs to get done. Here's what you have available to get it done. Here's the priority assigned to it. Here's when it needs to get done by. Here's the meeting to check on the progress. Here's the consequences or the benefits of getting it done. And did the task get done? And is there a possibility for feedback? Then they got to sign off. And once I learned how to delegate, people always brag about how they could outwork you, right? At my lead, I can outwork anybody. I work weekends. I work nights. I'm up at 3 a.m. and I'll out delegate most of the people in the home service industry. And I think bragging about how hard you work is useless.
Yeah.
I don't care about how hard anybody works because I have 800 employees. If they do 70% of me, I'm still at 56,000% of what I could do. So I think it's a joke when people talk about how hard they work. They don't control their schedule. They say yes to too many things. They go out and start a restaurant. The one thing that's feeding you and your family, you don't invest in the brand. You're called Discount Roofing. What the F is that? Why would you call it Mello's Roofing, my last name? Like, come up with something unique you could trademark.
Yeah.
Come up with a great brand. I recommend Kick Charge because it's the best money you'll ever spend if you want to be a recruiting with A players, if you want to be able to charge more, if you want to leave memory. People go, I don't have 30 grand. And I go, you'll never have 30 grand. You never will if you don't make the change. And people are afraid of it. They won't do it. They won't hire Al Levy because they're like, oh, that's just another. And I've spent a lot of money on consultants that didn't work. And I don't ever share their names because I talk about what's worked for me and what's tried and true. And these guys are. I read this book called The Sales Boss by Jonathan Wisman, and I got a hold of him. And he built this. He invested in this company, became the CEO of this software called Who Hire. And I started profiling my employees, and I started knowing if there's going to be winners. And his test would say, hire this person. And those all became the top technicians in the company. And so it's been a culmination of hiring and testing. But what's nice is my Rolodex has grown of winners. And I happen to meet the right people at the right time. And a lot of business owners try to do it all at once. Get your brand right first. Before you spend more money in marketing, before you spend more money on recruiting dollars, get the brand and let the community know who you are. Number one. And number two is I'll always focus my attention on marketing and on the financials. And I had to become an expert at those subjects. So those are my passions. I love sales as well. Most people can't afford a good CFO. Their books are in shambles. They don't have KPIs. So invest in a fractional CFO that makes $500,000 a year. Use them for 5 hours. So you pay an eighth of that. So you're spending 40, 50 grand, but he's giving you the systems to run a real business, to build automations, to build it where it's auto reconciliation. These are the things that people don't talk about. And people are like, why do you give all your stuff away? Why do you tell everybody? Because if I didn't receive this information, then where would I be? So I pay it forward to the people that have helped me.
Do you remember those? I'm sure you do, right? Those early days, and you talk to contractors all over the country, and what do you think the mental roadblocks are at those phases? Because writing the check, it blows me away when it's like, hey, yeah, I don't want to hire this, a fractional CFO. They're going to cost me, $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 a month. It's amazing to me that an entrepreneur in those early stages won't write those checks, or even in later stages, right? You had talked about the mentors and coaches, but also that 23% EBITDA. Did you say 23% EBITDA trying to get to 30?
Yep.
That's you need those people to get anywhere near there. But when you are that early in those early phases of business, the margins are there, right? You are, because it's all you. So what advice, what mental roadblocks do you feel people have? And then how do they, to me, it's just write the check, right? You have to try. You have to go out there, but it's knowing the right people. So you already name dropped some good people. It's not going to work every time. Get through your mental roadblocks. What are those mental roadblocks?
So here's the thing for most business owners when they first start. They make a lot of sacrifice. They started out pretty broke when they started, so they got to do human capital. They got to put sweat equity into the business. And a few years go by, and unfortunately, they don't have what's called delayed gratification. They go out and they change their livelihood. They move into a bigger house. They put their kids in nicer schools. They buy the nice car for them and their wife. They buy the Harley. And they never have enough money to reinvest because they think they deserve all these things because they paid the price. But instead of paying the money back into the business and having it compound, which it does, Einstein said the strongest thing in the universe is compound interest. And it can work against you or for you. They go and invest in all these things that are unfortunately selfish because they think they deserve it. They talk and they say, we've sacrificed enough. The first 5 years, you owe everything back to the company. You live below your means. If you can't save money at 60 grand, it won't help to make 100 grand. It won't make, everybody says if I just made 200, I'd have all my answers. Then it turns to 300, then 500. I mean, literally at the end of the day, I don't care how much money you make. I was putting $300 away when I was 16 into my Roth IRA. I barely made ends meet. I bounced checks back then, but the 300 made it to my account. There's a good book by Michael McCullough. It's called Profit First and understanding to put that money away. And it's a great book on that lesson. But I think the mindset is you're not owed anything. You took all the sacrifices. You're building a business worth a lot of money. Hopefully you're building a company that's sellable, even if you don't plan on selling it. And here's the deal. If you're not building a business that's sellable, you're a effing idiot. And you say, well, I'm not ready to sell yet. That's why it looks like shit. My books are all screwed up. And that's why I have. Pretend you're selling your business next week. What would you do? Who would you fire? Who would you hire? Why are you waiting? And, you know, a CFO is not responsible for the financials. They're responsible for your taxes. They're responsible for pumping the gas or pumping the brakes or hitting the gas. They're responsible for accelerated depreciation. They're the Augusta tax rule, cost segregation studies, renegotiating with your vendors, renegotiating with the marketing campaigns, keeping an eye on every department. Like, people don't understand what the CFO position does. If I could talk to my earlier self 10 years ago, I would have said, spend the money on that person, but get the right person. And people go, like, the financials are so important of when to be growing, when to be renegotiating. The numbers, when I met this PE company, I'll show you. I've got a meeting with them tomorrow, an operational meeting. Here's our deck for the 1 month. This is one presentation in addition to our project recap, which is another 30 pages. And it's all data. And the data will set you free. It tells you what to do. It tells you where to grow, where to put the money. And that's the number one thing is their mindset. It's afraid of change. What did I do for 4 years? I went and studied HVAC. We've got 33,700 service agreements. We've used financing. We never call it finance. We call it promotions. We took all the best of one industry, and roofing needs that more than ever.
Yeah.
If I was in roofing, I'd already have $5 billion in my, I believe this. It's a higher average ticket. The guys playing the roofing game, if when I get into it, I would say good luck. Because I have to run 18,000 jobs a month to be where I'm at today. 18,000. If I get onto roofing or HVAC or plumbing, it would be, but I'm already 17 years into this and I've got a lot of competitive advantage and I've got economies of scale and I'm really good at something. So I'm saying no. And I'm a racehorse. Racehorses wear blinders. Why do they wear blinders? So they can focus on winning the effing race. And that's what's so important to me is there's a lot of loud things coming at them. There's trash being thrown out on the field in the Kentucky Derby. They're focused on winning. They don't say yes to every opportunity. It's a skill saying no.
Saying no is the most important. But one of the things that I say it all the time, businesses need to be built to be sold. If you're not building it to sell, you're not building a business, right? Like you're not building.
John Warlow wrote the book, Built to Sell.
That's right. It's like if you're not, and if you start with that in mind, it's again with the end in mind, looking at, you said an integrator, understanding your strengths and weaknesses, passing that off to the person, to the right people, hiring people smarter than you is the best thing you can ever do, right? I heard something recently. A lot of times we hire assistants in that position where we, instead of people that own the position, we hire people to assist us in that position. They don't take ownership of those roles, which doesn't take the time away from you. But if you find the right people that own the position, and that's what I hear from you, right? Like in what you're talking about, having people that own the position.
Well, when everybody's responsible, nobody's responsible. Yeah. When you say, why are we getting great reviews? Well, who's the person in charge of that and how are you paying them? I switched to performance pay. Every single role from our CFO down to our CMO, down to our technicians, our CSRs and dispatchers, they've got skin in the game. When I'm winning, they're winning and vice versa. Somebody makes 200 grand, I am a cheerleader. I'm excited. And the Elevate mindset is figure out what's important to them. Do they want to own a house? Do they want to take their kids to Disney World? Do they want to take their dad to Europe on a great camping trip? When you can motivate people from what they want, they don't care about the records of the company unless they have equity. And I always recommend an equity incentive program. There's a reason why every private equity company has profit units, and they give them out to C-suite and directors. There's a reason why every public company does stock offerings to their people, because it gives them ownership in the outcome. And I just don't understand the small mind of saying I deserve this all, because you could go 10 times faster when everybody's rowing in the same direction. And, a lot of people, they're not honest with themselves. They look at themselves. They say, I'm going to quit smoking. I'm going to be a better dad. I'm going to show up for my wife. They lie to themselves every day in the mirror. They look into the mirror and they say, who's going to take you seriously? I'm going to start getting in shape. And then you don't. You never made quit lying to yourself if you want people to take you seriously. You read a new book. You got a new idea. Who cares? It's going to last 2 weeks and you're going to go on to the next thing. You got to have discipline. And very few people have discipline and consistency. And they want it tomorrow instead of putting in the hard work.
That's for sure.
And I don't know what to say to these people, except you better recalibrate yourself. You better start focusing. You better get the interruptions out of your life, because you're going nowhere. What got you here won't get you to the next level. The people, a lot of the times, will not get you to the next level. And just because you're loyal and you have a relationship with somebody, is it the best for everybody at that company to keep a B player that not bought into your vision? Absolutely not. And to get where I am and to get to where I'm going, and I'm in the fetal stages, I'm just getting started, you got to make tough decisions. You got to have fierce conversations, and it's never easy. And you got to think about what's the best thing for the company, the clients, the partnerships, the vendors. And most people, they keep people because they're loyal. And this economy where we're headed, good luck. You're going to be out of business. You're going to be selling your business for pennies on the dollar because you were stubborn, because you think you owe it to the people. You owe it to the people to make the best decisions for the company. And there's nothing wrong with making a very big profit. And the Bible says the root of all evil is the love of money, not money. Money's a great thing if it's a tool.
That's awesome. One of the things I heard is looking forward, right? Especially moving into the economy that is ahead, all challenges that are coming in front of us. How do you prepare? What are you thinking of? What are you planning for in those next, 3, 5, 10 moves?
Yeah, so obviously acquisitions is a big piece. I find companies that I know I could overlap my key performance indicators and build a really, really strong value in that company. The other thing is obviously marketing. It was really easy through COVID. It was, how do we find more people? Now it's, how do we get more leads? And one of the things is, I look at leads. Marketing is not only finding great clients, but it's finding great people. And I'll tell you this, if you could take your number one technician and duplicate him or her, you'd be killing it. So people are very, very quick to say, I don't know what I'm going to do. Biden sucks. Ukraine, Russia, what's happening with credit scores. It's like they want to blame everybody else instead of looking in the mirror and taking ownership and saying, what am I going to do going forward? It's pretty sad when you hear all the victims out there saying, you don't understand. You don't even know. Even technicians, my dispatcher doesn't like me. I'm in a bad economy. Christmas is coming. It's tax season. Everybody's got a reason instead of what's controllable in your four walls. What can you do? You've held on to piss poor technicians for a long time, people with horrible conversion rates. Your marketing dollars aren't going where they used to be. Of course not. We were spoiled. And you set a budget based on COVID demand. That's your fault. You chose that budget. So what I'm doing to prepare is getting very, very good top grading, making sure everybody's motivated, everybody understands their piece in the cog. That's a bad word, but you're only as strong as your weakest link. And everybody's got to do their part. And what happens when you start growing is the company gets siloed. The departments care more about their department than the good of the company. And it's hard to kind of untangle that. And you're constantly untangling that, focusing on the bigger picture. And these things I've learned over time, but I'll tell you what, we're very good right now, but we could be so much better. I always say I'm the best I've ever been, but the worst I'll ever be, because I know we're going to be a little bit better tomorrow. And it's progress. And I accept change and I welcome change. And we're going to close down 2 departments. We're going to close down 2 markets. But guess what? We're going to still double next year because I know where my focus is. And we're very competitive business owners, a lot of the home service guys. And we say we could do anything we put our mind to, but there's certain things you're doing that aren't getting an ROI. So get rid of those quickly. And it starts with the proper delegation. It starts with owning everything, good and bad. A lot of owners, they get in meetings and they complain and they yell at their people. Why aren't you getting more reviews? Why aren't you going to B&I? I don't see enough yard signs. Talk about the big wins. Talk about how to inspire people. Celebrate the wins and people breaking through that mental barrier. Instead of being Debbie Downer, one-on-ones are when you talk to people about things they could be working on. And you show them you want to go on this trip to Hawaii to renew your vows for 2 weeks. I can get you there 3 months quicker. And here's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you how to help your work build your family. And you got to bring the wife in. You got to bring the husband in and let them know what's going on and get them all that household on the same page. Very few people, 83% of people, they won't quit a job because they've made a best friend at work. And where do they make a best friend? Not at work. It's outside of work. We're going bowling with the entire company later, at least our Phoenix division. We do things. We cook for the guys twice. We just had lunch delivered at noon. And people say they can't afford this, but you could afford going to Costco and baking or cooking pancakes, flipping them around, or burgers for everybody. Break bread with your people. What? And now you're not as profitable. It's the best time to be thinking about these things to create profit. But understand that the buck stops with you. I don't care. I hear so many victim stories. Jim, it's crazy.
I know
how many people think it's not their fault.
I know. It's crazy, man. The ownership of it, right? I think that in what you're talking about is that company culture. And I just got to write an excerpt for a book or a little quote for a book. And I talked about company culture and I just talked about how company culture is earned, right? It's earned every day. It's not, you don't, to me, it's maybe it's just semantics, right? But company culture is not created, it's earned, right? And that's what you're talking about. If you're out there in the shop flipping pancakes, if Tommy is flipping pancakes, that's a different thing, right? The friendships that are created, that is what leads to that culture. It's what leads to retention. Everyone is wondering how, especially in the roofing industry, man, the sales reps, and I'm sure it's similar in the garage industry, the turnover on the reps, right? It's like, my goodness, man, it's so, but there's a reason for it. If you are an owner who casts a wide net, brings people in, lets them potentially sink or swim, and hope that the ones that swim make you money, you're losing, right? You're not creating an environment. You're not uplifting people. Those people are the ones that are going to leave and open a company right down the street from you, right? As soon as they figure out, oh, well, man, I could do this. Tommy doesn't care about me. Why should I work for him anymore, right? He's just looking at my paycheck. How did you develop that culture in A1?
Well, I would say culture will happen whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
Culture is going to build itself. It's going to exist whether you build it or not. So unless you get involved. I read this book, The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. And in part of the book, he says that he wanted to find the perfect wife. So he wrote down 100 things in the perfect woman. And he wrote down all the attributes, motherly, everything she would need to be. And he read the list out loud and he said, this is unattainable. A guy like me can never get a woman like this. So he figured out he'd have to write down 100 things he would need to become to be worthy of such an amazing woman. So I had COVID happen and I had people waiting outside of this door out here and they came in one by one. I was waiting for them to quit and tell me they're done. And one guy said, I want to cut my pay in half. The next person said, I want to volunteer all my sick time. And this was the line of people. And I didn't get to 100 things, but I wrote down about 20 things I would need to become to be worthy of such great people and to be a leader. And I'd have to lead from up front. And, I started working out a lot and eating healthy. I noticed a lot of people do that. When my desk is a mess, I noticed everybody's is. So I had to really become somebody better to be worthy of the people I wanted to have at this company. I need to become a great communicator. I would need to become, tell everybody where we're going, the vision. Tell them everyone knows how profitable we are each month. Everybody knows we don't hide anything. Everybody's welcome to come to my house. People say you can't. My house is it's an $11 million house. I paid cash for it. I'm not I don't have a lot of pride, or I'm not saying look at me, but people go, they can't come to your house. You can't let people know. I'm like, they know how hard I work. They helped buy me this house. They're each buying houses. Their life could be good too, but I don't have to hide everything and say the owners become very, very protective of everything. And because you get screwed over once, people say, what happens if I trade them and they leave? And the answer to that is, what happens if you train them and they stay? And it's a lot of fear. The fear is driving the wheel for most business owners, because some of them aren't good people. Some of them don't want to share. Some of them don't really care how their employees exist. They don't care. They're happy that they make 60 grand a year, and they say, you should be thankful that I gave you this opportunity, instead of saying, I want you to make a lot more. I want you to accomplish your dreams. I want you to write down your bucket list. I want you to dream bigger, and then build a path for them. And if you do that, I promise you, you'll be way more successful. You'll get burned here and there, but it's 1% versus the great things happening the other 99%.
Yeah. We've entered a really different world, right? My dad worked in a mine in northern Minnesota, like in the union, and it was, you go to work and get your paycheck, right? There was no. But today, everyone has so many opportunities and choices that they can make, right? And you want to become the company that they choose to work with. I had a question on the performance-based pay. I think that a lot of people don't have an understanding of how to create a performance-based pay around. Sales is easy, right? Sales is an easy one. How do you create that for the operations team, for the internal teams?
So I get this question about a dozen times a day. Is first you write down what do you want a call center rep to do? You want them to book the phone call. You want them to not give prices over the phone. You want to make sure it's street instead of avenue, and you want to make sure they show a lot of empathy. So those would be the 4 things that you make. And then you figure out a point system, which we call our scorecards. And you got to have data accuracy when you're building these, and ways to do checks and balances. And then you build a pay that says, okay, we're going to check these things, and we're going to pay them more for every call that's booked. So they got skin in the game, right? So I got 60 CSRs that work from their home, and they get excited when a call rings because they know they get to make money on that call. And what we did is we built an Excel sheet of what they make now versus what the performance pay would be, because we got all this historical data. So you can basically build models. Anybody that has a comprehension of how to do Excel, anybody even fairly good could build this. And when we did this with the CSRs in the call center, we actually saved money. It didn't cost as much, but all of a sudden, a couple people ran ahead and started making a lot of money. And then our booking rate went from 70% to 87%. And all of a sudden, it started to get expensive. But in the scheme of things, it was incrementally much cheaper to give people performance pay, because the output of the company lifted so much more that although it became dollars wise more money, we started making a lot more profit, and the marketing dollars went a lot further when you're booking those calls. And when we show up to the call and they were smiling on the phone and like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to hear that. We're a great company. I'm so happy I work here. We're going to supersede all your expectations. We want to earn your business. They'd automatically trust us. They said, no one could be that nice on the phone. This is a great company. So we'd book the call, not give a price, and the customers would be giving us hugs when we showed up. And so that's one department. Dispatchers focus on dispatching for dollars, getting the right technician. And the dispatch job is a little more difficult because you might have to reschedule something that's not an emergency, and that's a skill. And so we've got our own metrics for the dispatchers, and our technicians are on sold out, or our installers are on sold hours, and our technicians are a fancy form of commission, which I hate the word commission, because we look at their reviews. Are they getting 5 stars? We look at their callback ratio. We look at 5 different things for the technicians that matter for the outcome. And it's not just straight commission, because literally they can't advance in the company, or their job is not going to last if we're not looking at the things that give the customer a great experience. And, you might ask, one of the questions in here is, what's your USP, your unique selling proposition? Well, what I can tell you is I would die for my mom in a heartbeat. And our mentality is do what's right for mom. It's not always selling the most expensive thing. It's doing what's right for that customer at the time. And like a doctor, they're going to ask you a lot of questions. How often are you drinking? What's your caffeine level? How much are you smoking? What's your exercise? What's your anxiety? What's your stress? They're going to look in your eyeballs. They're going to look in your nose, your throat. They're going to do all these tests. Then they're going to give you the prescription that's right for you. And the right thing for every customer could be different depending on what's right for mom. What would you do if it was your mom's and you knew she was moving next week? Would you do the 40,000 or the expensive route with the 40-year, or would you do what's right for mom every time, and more clients will come to you? And if you're not giving options, you're giving ultimatums. Every customer should have 5 options. The choice is not if you're going to use this. The choice is what option are you doing. You're definitely going to use our company because we're gonna blow your mind. We're going to offer coffee, and what do you like? What could I offer you on the way? We send them a profile of the technician with their dog and their kids, and they're smiling in the picture. And then we make sure our personal hygiene's okay. We park on the street, not in the driveway. We knock because neighbors and friends knock. Strangers ring the doorbell. We smile. The things we do are just different than most companies. We sit down at their kitchen table. We go through the options. And these things need to be trained. And training never stops. In football, I did 2-a-days. I practiced 10 times a week to play once. But in home service, we say, do a ride along for 2 weeks and you're on your own forever. Why is that?
It's crazy. I've always thought of that. Like it's in school, in sports, you're always training. There's always a level of training, but in work, we always forget about that. It's like one of the things that I love about what you're talking about is that you've thought about the customer experience from end to end. So first thing, you're starting with your brand in your customer experience, right? You're thinking about what your brand is in the marketplace, how people are looking at your brand, seeing you everywhere, the way that your wraps look, all of that, the impression you're making without them even having a conversation with your company. Then it's the conversation with the CSR and how that conversation goes and the detail that goes in there. Then the detail about how the messages that are sent when the tech is on the way, right? Like all of the small details along the way. That is so far levels above your competition. This is it, and it doesn't take all of that to create a gap, right? To me, I think like a lot of times, just doing some of those things is going to create a gap between you and other contractors in your area. But when you get to the level of doing all of those things, my goodness, like it's a complete difference in what you're doing. Then that leads to what you've seen in that explosive growth. That's amazing. What I also heard about in you is that you've kind of turned from ownership to entrepreneur into educator, right? Like that's where I see you kind of going that direction, and it's within the company, but it's also as an educator, you're always learning, is what I'm hearing from you. Like the amount of books you've recited and people, right? It's like you must just continuously take things in. What does that look like for Tommy to on a month-to-month basis? Like how are you looking at that?
So I speak at a lot of events. I'm on a lot of podcasts. I got my podcast. Yep. But I've got 4 sales coaches. I've got 2 speaking coaches. I'm always investing in myself, my brand, and everybody around me. I used to be the only guy to go to events. And I went to Pantheon, the Service Time event. We brought 20 people with us. And as I became a bigger learner and a teacher, because when you got to teach something, you got to live it, right? So like the more I teach other garage door companies, Garage Door Freedom, the more I have to become an expert in the subject matter. Yeah. And, I get to the point where I'm engaging in a lot of things because I need to become the master of that craft. But I can't say yes to everything. But when I teach, it's like going to the gym. You can work out by yourself, but when you bring somebody else, it's like all of a sudden you're benching more, your form's better. You're there to teach somebody how to do it right. And all of a sudden you start caring more and your workout becomes 10 times more effective. And I think that's true in business and in life too. I think when you take your kids out and you're teaching them something, you want to give them the best habits. You want them to look both ways before they cross the street on a bicycle, even though you might not even realize you're doing it or do it right. And you start building processes and going, I didn't realize I did this, but this is part of my process. When I met Al Levy, he went out with 5 technicians. They did everything differently, from the way they did the sales to the way they did the technique of the install.
Yeah.
So we teach operational, technical, and sales. And those are the 3 things we focus on. If you're not good operationally on the CRM and understand the finance tools, if you don't know how to replace a part efficiently, you'll never do it. So operations plus technicians equals sales. We teach them the right words to use. We never say the most expensive. We say top of the line. We never say the cheapest. We say the economical builder grade. We never say sign the contract. We say okay the paperwork. We never call it financing. We say promotions. And these things matter. But 55% of what we do is nonverbal. 32% is tonality. And the very little left over is the words we use. So not giving eye contact, not smiling. Those things are the biggest drivers. And when you say the price, don't stutter. Never say the words hundreds or thousands. If it's $34,500, just say $34,500. Don't sell out of your own pocket. You know, I would buy a lot more from the home service companies that come to my house if they offered it. And that's another thing, like I always say, you got to give a lot of options.
That leads me to what in that to your EBITDA for like profit is what we're talking about here, right? For people who don't understand what EBITDA is, essentially profit before depreciation, amortization, interest. To get to those kind of margins, you're definitely not the cheapest in town, right? But you are able to create enough value. What are a couple of key things that you are looking at doing when you're going out, when you see a company that you're looking to acquire? Hey, these are a couple of things that we know that we can improve on quickly to increase the profit in this business. In other words, what can a contractor do quickly in their business to like, these are some quick levers that we can pull to increase the profitability of our company?
So when I buy a business, there's a lot of things that are always broken. Almost every business I buy. Typically, what I find is the average technician is running 5 to 7 plus jobs a day. We like our guys to run 3. We like them to build a relationship, spend time in that house, not driving to the next job. So less jobs. There's sacred opportunities you need to spend time with. Number 2 is don't follow the competition. In this book, 100 Million Offers by Alex Hormozy, what he explains in here is how most companies operate. It's a good book. I learned some stuff, but basically it said everything I knew, and I love Alex. But what he explains in the book is how most people get their pricing. So why should you charge so much that it hurts? Here's how most people typically go about their pricing model. Look at the marketplace, see what everyone else offers, take the average, go slightly below to remain competitive, provide what their competitors offers with a little more, end up giving a value proposition of more for less. And the big secret is those competitors are copying, that they are copying are dead broke, so why on earth copy them? Dan Kennedy says, charge a higher price you can without smiling when you give the price. What happens when you charge more? Well, first of all my stuff is trademarked, so I'm not comparing apples to apples. And someone might look at a tune-up and they say they're offering it for $49, let's do $39. My mentality is, what else can we include in the tune-up that's different that no one else is offering? And we do have a good price. That's one option.
Yeah.
But we also have different options. And people say there's no way you could charge the prices you charge. And I go, we're not even the most expensive, but we're the best value. And it's hard to believe that some people make a profit, but the only way they make a profit is they're making $250,000 a year, but they're working 7 days a week. And if they looked at what they'd be making in another company, they'd probably be making $300,000. So they're not making any money. And so here's a formula for you to understand, everybody listening. When I go into a business, I look at their average ticket, their conversion rate, their booking rate, and their cost per acquisition. Those 4 things I can fix any company. I can fix a dentist. I can fix a hospital. I can fix any e-commerce site if I look at those 4 KPIs: average ticket, conversion rate, booking rate, and cost per acquisition. And most companies, they say I'm probably at an 80% booking rate. They don't have a CRM that's tracking that. They don't count everything because it's out of their service area. Well, why are you getting calls outside your service area? If you don't count it, you'll never fix it if you don't know the problem. So I basically overlap our KPIs, and then I say, here's where I'm going to get the company. And so when I buy it for 5, 7, 10x, if I double a couple of those KPIs, I'm actually paying 2x. So I pay it back in 2 years. I'm getting what's called arbitrage, my favorite word in the English dictionary. Arbitrage means I buy it here and I can sell it for this. The day I buy a company, I'm worth more money because I've got a much stronger infrastructure and because the owner could get removed and the company still runs. When you buy a company, if the owner's doing everything, I'm going to need to replace that owner. That might cost $300,000. So I got to take that out of the multiple that I'm paying them. And these are complicated things for people, but you got to read and learn about this stuff. If you have any, I'll never buy a business or start a business that I can't exit in 5 years or less, typically 3. And typically I'm going to 10x the business because I understand arbitrage and I understand EBITDA and I understand service agreements. I understand how to use the financing tools. The companies that don't, it's a dirty shame. You know, I do 2 shop tours a month. And I'm just putting this out there. If anybody wants to come see and ask questions, I don't charge for these. You fly into Phoenix, you can see how our operation runs. And it's a way for me to pay it forward. And a lot of people walk out of here and their heads are blown. They're like, I got a lot of work to do. But at least they know what they should be focusing on. There's so much things we talked about. They don't know the chronological order of what to do next. They don't know that brand. And then they go brand themselves, but they don't have any money in the bank. Or they go out and buy $300,000 of inventory in December because their CPA said so. So they pay less taxes. But now they don't have any money in the bank. So they got to know their known financial position. And I'm pretty good at understanding the order of operations, but it depends on the company. And a lot of companies are doing 10 million, but they're only bringing away 6%. And that's not okay. I'd rather you do 8 million and bring 20%. And people are like, they go into a room, in a roofer's room, and they only talk about revenue. And revenue is for vanity, profit is for sanity.
For sure, man. It's really the lifeblood, right? And there is so much talk about that top line all the time, all day, every day. How much did you bring in top line? I know a lot of really profitable $3-4 million roofing companies that make more than the 10, 15, $20 million roofing companies with a lot less headache almost, right? Like they're very, very simplified, very, very efficient in what they do. You talked about potentially going into the roofing space, so maybe you've put some thought into this. If you were to start in the roofing space, what would you be thinking about? What would your greatest insight for our audience be in starting a roofing company and growing a roofing company?
Well, number one is I know how to work with insurance companies, but I would never build a business. What I would do is greenfield in with a storm and use that to build the business. And then I would build the brand. And I would get very big on 4 algorithms on Google: pay-per-click, LSA, GMB, and organic. I'd build a really great brand. And I'd have a training center. I would never just do what the insurance, they give me 18 grand. I'm still selling 34 grand. I'm just doing the 16 grand on top of what the insurance is giving. And the first thing I would do is spend the first month going and visiting the 5 largest shops and seeing who wants to partner up in some fashion, because I know what I could do. And I happen to know some of the biggest, best roofers in the industry. And I know what guys are getting into it. And I know a lot of the guys that have been very blessed in the last decade, they have no idea of the operators getting into the business. They might say they'll never understand our business. I don't need to know how to lay a roof. I don't need to know anything about insulation. I don't need to know about the squares on a roof. I know this. I got 1,000 people coming at me with the technology. I know how to give good quotes and differentiate ourselves. And when you get this sophistication of operators coming in, the roofing industry is about to get attacked. And so is gutter, so is solar. And if you don't learn to get really, really wise, you won't stand a chance. What I recommend, if you're not ready for the next 5 years to go hard in the paint and put the time in and start making change, sell now while you still have a profit. Get something for your business because it's going to be wiped out. And if you need more leads, especially, and you're sitting back going, I don't know what to do about leads, and you're calling your marketing company begging for leads, but your conversion rate, your average ticket, the things you can affect, you're not affecting, then that's even a bigger issue. If right now you're saying I'm not getting enough leads, sell your business fast because it's not going to get any easier. If you're used to those COVID times, look out. You know, when the going get tough, the tough get going. When I'm between a hard rock, when I'm in a tough spot and I'm put in a corner, I prevail. And waiting for the changes to where you've got to lay off somebody to make payroll is the last time. You don't look for a loan when you need a loan. You look for one when you don't. Because if the right opportunity presents itself and you go buy somebody out. And what I recommend for acquisitions is do not grow out of your market until you own market share in your current market. Because what makes you think if you're not making 20% in your current market and you got 10% of market share, then moving somewhere where you're not present, where your kids didn't go to school, where you don't know everybody, where your family is, that it's going to be better. I've got all these people that go, I'm working on a franchise. I'm like, oh, you must be making millions a year in profit and must have really good market share. Oh, no, but I'm doing something no one else is doing. Yeah, no one else is doing it because you're not making money. and they think someone wants to buy their shit. And the fact is that if you are going to start a franchise, it better work in 3 markets. One is your market, 2 other markets, and it better be ultra successful and run without you. Without you, meaning no contact, no coaching. Because you can't franchise something that doesn't run on systems and processes, KPIs, and standard operating procedures. Like, here's the facts. Everybody thinks they got a great idea and I'm doing it different, but the money doesn't lie. KPIs don't lie. And here's another thing. People do not quit their jobs. They quit their bosses. And if you don't become a better leader, look out. Because I'm telling you, I guess I'm a little bit cocky when it comes to it, but when I go into another industry, I'm not coming in broke. I could throw $100 million at something with my eyes closed. How do you compete? Especially when we got a better culture, when we got a better brand, when we pay people more. I'm going to attract the top talent in anything I go in. And they're going to have an ownership stake. They're going to have skin in the game. And that's how I could do things so quickly. And I learned these the hard way.
It takes a lot of effort doing the right thing over and over again. Thinking of it as a business, not as being self-employed. Tommy Mello, the book is Elevate, Home Services Expert Podcast. Where else can people find you?
You know, if I were you guys, join the Home Service Expert group on Facebook. Reach out to me. I put out a lot of stuff. Official Tommy Mello on Instagram, on TikTok. I'm big on LinkedIn. If you want to reach out to me, I'm all over Facebook. The book, Elevate, I think it'll change your life. I have a lot of co-authors, and I still think my first book is gold. I got 12 co-authors. Al Levy's in the book. Ellen Rohr's in the book talking about financially getting your finances together. You learn how to sell your business. I had Ara Medesian, the guy that started ServiceTitan, and wrote a chapter on picking the right CRM. I can tell you that success leaves clues. And a lot of people are listening to this podcast saying I got a lot to work on. You know what? Very few people are going to do 1%. They're going to take me up on the offer to come here. They message me through Facebook. We'll get them on a shop tour. It's weird. They know what they need to do, but they never do it. So my question to the audience is it one day? One day you're going to be successful. One day you're going to get in shape. One day you're going to become a better leader, a better father, a better son, better husband, better mother. Or is today day one? Is it time to get started? Are you ready to make up your mind? You got an open mindset? Are you ready for change? Because if you are, I'll help, and I think a lot of people will help you. And I'll tell you, I'm ready to give everything I got because I've learned Zig Ziglar once said this, and I got a notepad here. You can have everything in life you want if you just help other people get what they want. And I live and die and breathe by that. So the more I help, it's weird. It just people say you keep getting lucky. You're always at the right place at the right time. And I'm like, you know, it's great to build relationships with great people. And here's the deal, Jim. If you don't look at your circle and get inspired, it's a cage and you're stuck. And you're around people that are victims. And the victims keep saying the same thing. It's a bad economy. I don't know how he does it. They must have got lucky. Blah, 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 blah. Winners find their own. You see, this is my bracelet. It says A1 from day one and aspire to be number one. Everybody around me wants to be the best version of themselves. What does that mean to you? What does that mean? Everything, to become the best version of yourself. And it's unattainable because you're going to continue to do better things. But I'm not happy just winning. I mean, when my enemies are drowning, I stick a hose in their mouth. So
I love it, Tommy. This has been a pleasure, man. Appreciate you. This has been another episode of the Roofing Success Podcast.
Thanks, Jim.
If you would like to generate more revenue through your digital marketing efforts, please visit roofermarketers.com to get a copy of the book, The Best Known Roofer. Also, check the training section of the website for guides on everything from running effective pay-per-click ads to how to properly set up your Google My Business listing. Thanks for listening.